Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Across the Bifrost, the Mighty Thor podcast, where we explore the world of Marvel's Mighty Thor. I am your host, Ryan Doze, and you are in for quite a treat today. If you listened to last week's episode of the show, you may be expecting a list of Thor's top villains today, but sadly, due to a scheduling conflict, the guest I had lined up for that, our friend Dan the Articulator, we weren't able to go and record that this week. Dan is a good friend of the podcast, and I do not want to do that list without him, so we will record that segment when his schedule allows. In the meantime, I still wanted to do a top list for you today. Since we aren't going to do the foes of Thor, I figured we would go in the exact opposite direction. Today, we are going to break down the top 5 friends of Thor, his allies, his supporting characters, those who have helped the Thunder God through his adventures, who fought alongside him, some who have even fallen in love with the Thunder God, and all of them are truly worthy supporting characters. We will get into that in just a minute, but before then, last week on our show, we were able to speak with Mike Rockwitz, former editor for Marvel Comics, an all-around creative handyman. He told us some great stories of his formative years working for Marvel Comics, rising in the ranks from intern to editor, and his love for creating Thor stories. Today, I'm proud to bring you part 2 of that conversation, where Mike and I go even further into his career, and we focus on his time working with the creators of the Mighty Thor. We cover so much of his career, and I don't want to spoil it for you right now. I know you will enjoy the conclusion of our conversation. Before we jump into those 2 awesome segments, I want to, again, as I do every week here on the podcast, personally thank each and every one of you that's listening to the show. I really appreciate the support. If you would go the extra mile and rate, review, and subscribe to the show wherever you find the podcast, whether it's on iTunes, Spotify, or any other platform that you're discovering the show, become a subscriber and you will never miss an episode of the show. We love when you jump aboard the Rainbow Bridge with us, and every time we do that, you'll be notified if you're subscribed to the show. We appreciate it immensely. Thank you, friends. Thank you for supporting this passion project. And since you are such a good listener, I will delay no further. Here we go with our top 5 friends of the Mighty Thor. As we get started here on this latest list, which I'm so excited for, I can't wait to talk about the friends of Thor. I wanted to clarify a few things before we jump into the list so that you don't have so many questions as we break it down. There are a few names you will not see on here. Some of them will be honorable mentions later on in the list, but you will not see characters who are traditionally villainous. So, sorry to all the fanboys and fangirls of Loki out there. Loki is not on this list. He does not appear. He will, however, appear on our villain list for sure when we do that down the road. So, characters who are traditionally villains will not be on this list. We are keeping it to the mostly good aligned characters, and there will be some honorable mentions later on. But let's jump into number 5 on our list of top 5 friends of Thor. At number 5, we have Beta Ray Bill. He first appeared in Mighty Thor 337. This issue is also noted for being Walt Simonson's first issue writing and penciling Thor. If you are unfamiliar with Walt Simonson, his run on the Mighty Thor book is legendary among Marvel Comics creators. Beta Ray Bill is a cyborg champion of an alien race called the Corbinites. Beta Ray Bill guarded his people, the Corbinites, as they fled attacks by fire demons. When he encountered Thor and proved himself worthy to wield Mjolnir, Odin bestowed upon him the powers of Thor, and he bestowed upon Beta Ray Bill a weapon called Stormbreaker, which is an equally powerful hammer that Bill uses. During the events of Ragnarok and Surtur's assault on Midgard, Bill came to the aid of Asgard when Thor left them to find out how he could break the cycle of Ragnarok occurring and then replenishing all of Asgard, and then Asgard succumbing to Ragnarok again. He was going off to find how to break that cycle, so he left Bill in charge of the forces of Asgard. Now, using his new weapon, Stormbreaker, Beta Ray Bill travels across the cosmos, righting wrongs, and he is also available whenever Thor would need assistance or help with something. So the reason why Beta Ray Bill falls at number 5 on this list is because he is incredibly worthy. That was the word that I thought of when I thought of Beta Ray Bill. He is worthy. He defends his own people, the Corbinites, with everything he has. All of their hopes and dreams were poured into Beta Ray Bill during his first appearance early on in Walt Simonson's Thor run. So he sacrifices for people. He is worthy of their trust, and he is a worthy warrior. He always comes to the aid of the mighty Thor. On to number 4 on our list. Coming in at number 4, Heimdall, the Norse god of vigilance, protection, and light. He is also the guardian of the Rainbow Bridge, the Bifrost, for which this show is named. This bridge links Asgard to the rest of the 9 worlds. As an all-seeing Asgardian, the stalwart god Heimdall is the chosen guardian of Asgard. He is almost always found atop the Rainbow Bridge as its guardian, protector, sentinel. Heimdall's gallant nature, his unwavering loyalty, and his unrivaled senses serve as a fantastic defense for all of Asgard. He is their first line of defense from all invading enemies. After the events of Ragnarok destroy Asgard, Heimdall was one of, if not the first Asgardian that Thor resurrected, so that Heimdall could help Thor put back the pieces of Asgard and find all of the Asgardians lost among the 9 realms. Why does Heimdall fall here at number 4? Well, Heimdall is been around for a long time in Marvel Comics. He is one of the first Asgardians that we are introduced to. He is prominently shown in the Tales of Asgard stories that we're actually going to cover in a few weeks here on the podcast, in case you didn't know that. And Heimdall is often portrayed as a stoic guardian standing aboard the Rainbow Bridge, staring out into the cosmos. He is always aware of the trouble that Asgard might be in. He is always on watch against the enemies of Asgard, and he has always come to the aid of Thor. His level of power is unmatched by most Asgardians. He always is someone that you want in your corner. Now, on to number 3. Coming in very fittingly at number 3 are the Warriors 3, Fandral, Hogun, and Volstagg. These are a group of 3 Asgardian adventurers who are some of Thor's closest friends and dearest comrades. Together, they often fight alongside Thor, and they have thwarted the schemes of many of Asgard's most vile villains through the decades. If Asgard be in danger, you can rest assured that the Warriors 3 will come to its aid. Now, I'm going to break down each member so you know what they bring to this entry at number 3 real briefly. Let's start off with Fandral. Fandral is known for his superior swordsmanship, his bravery, his ego, and his extreme optimism. No matter the consequences, he will always do what's right, even if the result is death. His good looks and his suave charm make him kind of the ladies' man of the Warriors 3. But this tendency to court more than one woman at a time has gotten him into trouble throughout the years, understandably. Despite these flaws, he possesses an excessive amount of noble spirit, and he will do the right thing without thought of his personal safety or his prosperity. Fandral is always a guy that you want on your team. Next, Hogun. Hogun is a short-tempered Asgardian. He is a skilled battlefield warrior, a great horseman, and a master of all weaponry. He is the only member of the Warriors 3 who is not an Aesir. He is not like most Asgardians in that way. He's not immortal in the way that most of the Asgardians are, and his homeland is lost to memory because it was destroyed so long ago. He is primarily characterized by his blunt, silent, and often short-tempered demeanor. He is the brooding pessimist of the group. He often plays opposite Volstag's unending good humor and Fandrel's overt desire for heroism. Hogan brings them down to the ground, and he tethers them to reality. He is a fierce and unrelenting warrior, a collector of weaponry, and he is often the voice of reason for the Warriors 3. Now on to my favorite member of the Warriors 3, none other than Volstagg the Voluminous. Volstagg is an essential part of the Warriors 3, and he is known for his mighty size, and his mighty size is only exceeded by his good nature and his humor. Of all Thor characters, I truly believe Volstagg is the funniest. He brings the laughs every time he is in a book. He is the comedic relief of the group. He's known for his hearty appetite and his wide girth. He often refers to himself as the Lion of Asgard. He is one to tell tall tales about himself that may or may not be true. Volstagg is kind-hearted, and he is truly a friend through and through. Now, when I landed on the Warriors 3 at number 3, which I did not plan, but they land at number 3, the word that I thought of for the Warriors 3 was brotherhood. Together with some other characters like Lady Sif, Balder the Brave, and other Asgardians that go on adventures with Thor in the Warriors 3, there is an immense amount of camaraderie and brotherhood between not only the three members of the Warriors 3, but with them and Thor. Wherever Thor goes, wherever he is going on an adventure, you can definitely expect the Warriors 3 to not, if not be there with him, to be close behind him. So the Warriors 3, definitely the brotherhood that Thor needs when he is heading off to an adventure, or if he's just sitting in the tavern one night and they're telling stories of the battles they have fought. They're also quite fun to have around when you need excitement at a party. Now, let's get into the last two members of our top 5 list. At number 2, the difference between number 2 and number 1 on this list was razor thin. I flip-flopped multiple times as to who should be number 2, who should be number 1, but I feel like I've landed in a good spot. So at number 2, we have the Lady Sif. She is the shield maiden of Asgard, a fierce warrior and a loyal ally. Lady Sif is also at the front of every battle when Asgard itself is in trouble. She is also one of Thor's main love interests. I told you we were going to get to some of Thor's love interests on this list. Sif is the first one. Thor's infatuation with Earth has been a constant draw away from Sif and his duties on Asgard throughout so many of his runs, and it's really a theme of Thor in comics. Sif did for a time try to live a mortal life on Earth, but she found it really boring, and she decided to go back to Asgard. Furthermore, their relationship has suffered numerous interruptions from other love interests of Thor, primarily Jane Foster, the Enchantress, and Lorelei. Sif and Thor, however, have always found a way to rekindle their romance. She is an Asgardian goddess, an everlasting comrade to Thor. She has long served as a warrior across the realms on behalf of her friends and her homeland. Why is Sif at number 2? So, Sif is an interesting character. She's one of my favorite supporting characters in Thor, and I actually believe she deserves a lot more play, maybe in her own limited series or her own comic someday. That might be really cool. One thing that I think characterizes Sif is she is loyal to the furthest degree. She is loyal to Thor even when he's interested in somebody else. She is loyal to Asgard even when she's not viewed on the same level as some of their her male counterparts. She is loyal to her homeland and to her friends, and she will always stand up for them when the chips are down. You can count on Sif to do the right thing and to stand up for her friends and for Asgard. Now, we're going to cover a few of the honorable mentions that didn't make the list for one reason or another, but I feel like they need to at least be brought up today on this top 5 list. So here are some of the honorable mentions that didn't make the list. Hercules, the Prince of Power. He is the Olympian god in Marvel Comics. Thor and Hercules have faced off so many different times. They've been friends. They've had a good-hearted rivalry for a long time. They have stood by each other when the universe or Asgard or Olympus was in trouble. So Hercules, definitely a worthy honorable mention. And I'm just going to lump in all of the Avengers here. This is another thing that I toyed with. Do I include individual Avengers on this list, like Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk? Do I include them on this list? I chose to go with them as a group honorable mention because each one of them is definitely worthy of a spot, and maybe someday we'll do a list that's the top 5 Avengers that helped Thor or something like that. But the Avengers are definitely worth at least an honorable mention here, the group of which Thor is a founding member. Also, Thunderstrike deserves an honorable mention here as well. Eric Masterson took on the mantle of Thor in the 90s. We actually got to interview and chat with one of Thunderstrike, Eric Masterson's creators, Ron Friends, a while back. So if you missed that episode, go and check that out. Ron talked a little bit about Thunderstrike and Eric Masterson in those if you want to know a little bit more about him. Also, Angela, I always don't know how to pronounce her name, but she is the sister of Thor in modern comics, and she is a formidable friend. She has, again, one of those friends where she's fought Thor before, and she's also come to his aid before. She's definitely worthy of an honorable mention. One of the most fun honorable mentions that I toyed with, but he didn't make the list, was Throg, the Frog of Thunder. Puddlegulp, the creation of Walt Simonson in the 80s run of Thor. Just so much fun to see the brash and courageous spirit of Thor come out of the body of a frog. Throg is definitely worthy of a mention here, and now we get to 2 names that you might have thought you would have heard on this list. Odin and Frigga. Now, I put them in my honorable mentions together, but let's be honest, Odin and Frigga both have their own relationships with Thor apart from each other. Frigga is much more of a supportive mother figure through most of Thor's comic runs, and Odin is sometimes even a foe of Thor's. He has definitely fought his son on many accounts. They do not have the healthiest father-son relationship that I can recall, but Odin and Frigga definitely worth an honorable mention here. And for some older comic book fans, this is a name, if you're familiar with 80s, 90s, Bronze, Silver Age comics, you might have thought you would have heard Balder the Brave's name on this list. Balder is a fantastic Asgardian warrior. He is, his nobility is the word that comes to mind when I think of Balder. He definitely worth a spot, but I felt that there were other entrants that deserved maybe a little bit more of a spotlight. But Balder, definitely a great supporting character in the history of Thor. Now, without further ado, let's get to number 1 on our list of top 5 friends of the Mighty Thor. Landing at the top spot on our list today is Jane Foster. Now, if you couldn't have told from our honorable mentions, maybe you guessed it was Jane all along. Yes, Jane Foster lands here on the top spot, and here is a little bit about Jane. Jane Foster was created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, and Jack Kirby, first appearing in Journey into Mystery number 84. If you're interested about her first appearance, go back and check out our Throwback Thursday episode, one of our first ones, and we talk all about her first appearance there. She is initially introduced as Thor's co-worker. She is a mortal nurse to the alter ego of Thor, Dr. Donald Blake. Jane soon became a primary love interest of Thor and Donald Blake's, appearing in nearly every issue of the initial series. Though her appearances started to grow fewer and fewer between the later years, Jane eventually received more attention throughout the Marvel Universe apart from Thor. In fact, during the Civil War storyline, she showed up as the doctor to Captain America's side, and she was able to even patch up and fix up Peter Parker after he takes a beating in that storyline. After decades serving mostly as a supporting character in other people's stories, Jane finally, in 2014, became a headliner. She was the headline in the relaunch of Thor, starring the new Goddess of Thunder, when Thor Odinson was deemed unworthy during the original Sin crossover event. So Thor is having to lay down the mantle of the God of Thunder, and Jane takes a turn as Thor. This was originally kept as a mystery, and with her recent cancer diagnosis serving as her cover-up, her secret identity. And during this time, she joined the Avengers, and she helped restore the universe back to the way it was intended to be, before the Secret Wars event that was also happening at that time. After dying as Thor, dying in quotes, after giving up the mantle of Thor, Jane relinquishes the name back to Odinson, which also it sent her cancer back into remission. So Jane really benefited from putting down the mantle of Thor as well. That would not be the end of her career as a hero, though, with developments in the War of the Realms storyline that just happened a year or so ago. It led her to become the brand new Valkyrie, and she headlined the first ever Valkyrie solo title. That's a little bit about Jane and what she has been up to nowadays and where she came from. Jane Foster lands at number 1 because, honestly, she's my favorite. She's one of my absolute favorite Thor characters. Her development over the years is unquestionable, from being kind of the simple 60s portrayal of a female side character to being a powerhouse in modern comics, not only as Thor, but as the current Valkyrie. Her time as Thor during the Jason Aaron run is fantastic. I know to some she can be a little bit of a controversial figure. You know, we don't need a girl Thor. Yes, we absolutely needed Jane Foster as Thor. It refreshed that character, and it also gave Thor a different avenue to walk down. The unworthy Thor line that was happening at the same time really fleshed out a lot more about Thor Odinson's character that would not have been able to happen if he had still retained the mantle of Thor. So when Jane took on the mantle of Thor, she definitely held her own. She was involved in so many important storylines, and definitely fought alongside Thor as well when they both needed each other's help. They are they've been lovers through the years. They have been friends through the years. They have really had each other's back for a long time. The word that I think of when I think of Jane Foster is hero. She lands at number 1 because Jane Foster is a hero. I hope you enjoyed this top 5 list. I look forward to doing more of these top 5 lists whenever I have time, and sooner rather than later, I hope we'll get Dan on the show and we can do the flip side of this coin, the villains of Thor. That will be a lot of fun when we get the chance. But if you have any ideas for a top 5 list that we could do, let us know at Mighty Thor Podcast on Instagram, or you can reach out to me on my personal Instagram at I am Ryan Doze. Now, let's conclude our conversation with Mike Rockwitz that we started last week. This is part 2 of our conversation with former Marvel editor Mike Rockwitz. Let's narrow in on your time with Thor, do you have any like any fun stories from that creative team that you got to work with? I mean, well, actually, maybe first, who are the creative teams that you got to work with at your your stint with Thor, and just maybe share some good story time.
Well, great stories. I mean, working with Tom and Ron and Joe. Tom had great ideas, fun to keep the mythos of Thor alive, tying him in with other characters, other comics as well, other instances like with crossovers. So that was a ton of fun, and I can't say which issue because every one of them was fun.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I mean, look what he created. He created Thunderstrike. You know,
What was the process of getting Thunderstrike off the ground? Because Ron and I talked about Thunderstrike a little bit, but from an editorial point of view, what was it like introducing Eric Masterson into the Thor, Thor universe?
I think it was pretty seamless. I think Tom came up with an idea. Ralph was like, "Hey, that's a great idea," and then Tom just wrote it in. I mean, it speaks for itself.
Yeah,
It wasn't like a massive, we have to kill Thor to make Thunderstrike. It was sort of like, oh, here's Eric Masterson. Thor kind of goes away for a while, and it's now Thunderstrike, and Beta Ray Bill shows up, and it's the Thor Corps, and like cool stuff. It was
yeah, yeah,
seamless. It wasn't like a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's just like, here, this is what we're doing, and it showed up. And Thunderstrike was just cool. He was quirky. He wasn't. He didn't speak in Asgardian speak as much as Thor, and he was Eric Masterson. He was a guy. He had problems. Like it wasn't like Don Blake, who just seemed like a tortured soul, who eventually just kind of drifted away anyway. Like, does anyone even remember Don Blake at this point? Jane Foster, but like Eric Masterson, you're like, oh wow, he was a integral part, sort of like the Peter Parker to Spider-Man.
yeah.
You understood the duality of the character. It wasn't just like one or the other. So they were closely tied in, and I think just the how quickly Tom established the universe, like with Code Blue, and a few of the other characters, while integrating, say, Ulick the Rock Troll in all of this,
I
and
love Ulick so much.
and Loki. Yeah, Ulick is another one of my favorites too. Um, it, you know, it's just the way he did it was seamless. It was fun, and there wasn't this pressure to perform. It just got done, and people liked it.
Yeah,
Because at some point, dare I say, Thor was getting a little stale. When you're around for 30 years or 25, 30 years, it's hard to keep figuring out what to do with them. I mean, look back at Roy's run on it. He did the Celestial Saga. Wow,
yeah.
with Keith Pollard. Those were some of the most incredible issues I've ever read. And the Celestials actually appear in the Marvel Universe now, which is
Oh yeah,
great. But
we're getting there. We're getting real close.
yeah, yeah. So, there's only so many of these epics that you could create. So by introducing Eric Masterson, it just kind of gave it a new lease on life, where everyone's like, "Well, what about Thor now? Oh, you miss Thor? Well, he's just not that far away." So it was well done, and it was an exciting part of it. And then during that, somehow I got promoted.
Okay, let's talk. Yeah, let's talk promotion to you. What, you were full editor then?
I was Ralph's assistant, and then I think there was an opening in the editorial department. And they took me out to lunch. They being Ralph, Mark Grunwald, Mark, rest in peace, I love you, and Tom DeFalco. And they said, "Well, we're going to promote you." And I was like, "Wow!" And I'd been leapfrogged by a few people, and I always felt like, "Man, what do I have to do to get promoted here?" But meanwhile, I was like in my early 20s, so I had no reason, looking back, to complain.
Yeah.
I was still getting a paycheck. I was still doing what I love, but I wanted more. I had that passion, and I think that was a healthy passion. It wasn't obsessive, like I said, but I had a passion. And they said, "You're promoted." So I'm like, "Great. What am I working on?" "Well, you're going to work on the Conan books." I'm like, "Awesome."
Yeah.
You're going to work on Nick Fury, Agent of Shield. I'm like, "Awesome." "You're going to work on Doctor Strange." I'm like, "Cool." "And you're going to work on Power Pack." And I'm like, "Oh gosh. Okay." So I'm like, "Okay, great."
Three out of four is not bad.
I couldn't wait to get started. They gave me my own office. I hired an assistant, Barry Dutter, who he he was good. Now he's reselling comic books, so shout out to Barry. And I was off to the races. They trusted me enough to hand me the keys to these classic titles and non-classic titles, and I had fun with it. And some of the before I left Ralph's office, like I had done a lot of trade paperbacks with Thor and Captain America, so I had a lot of fun working with like Walt Simonson on that, and also the like when we were reprinting the Beta Ray Bill saga, so that was a lot of fun
Okay.
in a trade paperback, and doing my own thing. I was excited, but then I was also kind of deflated too, if that makes sense, because here I was working on the comics I always loved, back to like Conan and Shield, kind of like books that were on their last legs. Nick Fury, Agent of Shield, before Marvel Universe movies, was not really. They didn't know what to do with them.
Was it floundering a little bit?
Yeah, they had that graphic, that 6-issue limited series that Bob Harris wrote, that was really cool. It gained a lot of momentum. It had beautiful painted covers, like Bob Larkin and a few other folks created these great covers. And they had this comic book that had some momentum, and then the teams quit, or I don't remember what happened. I inherited it. So I just did my best with it. Power Pack, I just never understood, but it was canceled. It was basically canceled, so I had to run it out to
Okay.
the edge of its existence. And then Doctor Strange was exciting. I put Roy on that book immediately, or he may have already been on, and I inherited him. I don't remember.
Okay.
And Conan, the first thing I did was I put Roy Thomas on that as well. And and I got rid of everyone. I put Roy Thomas on. I hired John Buscema. I brought back a lot of the old inkers, and we just had fun with it. Because if I'm going to work on Conan, I want it to be the Conan that I like. And it was a seamless transition because the fans liked it. It still sold. No one. It wasn't too disruptive. It wasn't like I had like Todd McFarlane on it or anything.
It
I
wasn't jarring.
yeah, it wasn't jarring, and it was a throwback, but it was something that people liked. It was comfort. It was kind of like a good old bowl of chicken soup that your grandmother made. Here's Conan the way it used to look like. And so I learned more about how to be an editor then. And then eventually, once like some books shifted, and then I got to work on Thor.
So you had a stint of time where you were off of Thor
Yes,
once you got in the editor role, and then when you came back as full editor on Thor, what was it like transitioning back to that book? But now you're kind of the quote unquote boss.
Yeah, I was the boss, all right. It was awesome. It was also very intimidating. It was also the time of great growth in comic books. It was sort of the where everything had a holographic cover or had multiple covers, and everyone was crossing over Wolverine and Ghost Rider, and people didn't know what to do with the characters, and so Thor once again was sort of relegated to not a hot book. And I think Tom left. Like Tom had left the book, and Ron left, so the creative team left. They went off to do Thunderstrike on their own, and I had Thor. So I worked on Thor. I hired Roy Thomas, and of
Sensing a
course,
theme here.
yeah, because he made it easy. I can't say that
Yeah.
I was the most effective editor. I was sort of lazy, but being lazy by hiring one of the greatest writers in the history of comics is probably makes me a genius or not. But I just said, Roy does it all. He's a writer, editor, and a perfectionist. So why not give it to him? And
Yeah.
he took it with him. And one of the things I struggled with was finding the right artistic team on it. So I had hired this artist, Bruce Zick, who
Okay.
Mark Grunwald had brought in some samples. He was like a Disney artist or something. He was like a background artist, and
Okay.
he had this Kirby feel to his artwork. It wasn't like a Ron Frenz Kirby feel. It was sort of a, I don't know if you know this artist Tony Salmons. He had a brief career in comics that I'm aware of.
Not a name I'm familiar
It
with.
sort of had an impressionistic look to it, but it still looked like Kirby.
Okay.
So I gave him a few issues, and it just didn't click. And it had Mike DiCarlo as the inker. Mike's an awesome human being and inker. He had worked on Batman and tons of other characters, and over Jim Aparo at DC. And I put him on that. And so Bruce didn't work out, and I was getting a little disheartened because as a baseball manager, you see like you're in a losing streak. You've lost 12 out of 14. You know, you're in third place. And that's how it's starting to feel. And that
Okay.
and that's how you have to just you need to shock things up, shake things up. There is, and not like I brought in someone from the bullpen. I found another artist, Gary Hartle, who was a much more traditional. He worked with Ron Friends on the backup stories of Thor when I was the assistant editor on it. So I was like, let's give Gary a shot. And Gary was awesome, and he did a few issues. And then I found this guy, MC Wyman, who I worked on with on Shield with. MC Wyman was an artist I found in the sample pile. You know,
Okay.
it got to the point where there was great growth. There was this thing called Image Comics where everyone thought they could be an independent contractor.
Yeah, yeah.
There was also DC Comics. There was a lot of competition, so a lot of work, but not a lot of artists to keep up. It's not like artists are just like waiting and lying in the lying in the wings, waiting in the wings, so to speak. You have to groom them and do the Marvel style, or just know that they can draw comic books the correct way. So MC Wyman got it. He was a little rough around the edges, but we brought him on and he was great. So, you know, looking back, I can't say that my my fandom necessarily translated to the best run of the Mighty Thor as I had hoped. You know, we had things like the God Pack, and you know,
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
back, you know, I kind of it's kind of cringeworthy, and we had some painted covers that looked cool when they came in the office, but 25 years later, they're kind of like, "Ooh, this looks like it belongs on the side of a van," you know.
A
Uh,
little dated.
yeah, or just cheesy, dare I say. Like airbrush covers were cool, but this didn't work. I mean, they're well done, but they just don't translate well. It's not like we had Alex Ross doing the covers.
I was just thinking the name Alex Ross.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I was
yeah,
like he can paint anything.
right. Yeah, he could paint a mailbox. You're like, wow, that's amazing.
This is the
Uh,
greatest mailbox ever.
yeah, yeah, and so I didn't have that experience, but you know, I'm not to say that I was like a third place manager in the major leagues. So for me to, you know, like, I'm not going to downplay my contributions, but I didn't win the division. You know, if I continue using the baseball analogy,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
was a major league manager on a third place or fourth place team, and
Well,
uh,
I'll
and that
put it
was
this
fine.
way. You've put together you put together way more comic books than I probably ever will. So for that,
Well,
I mean, as a kid who, you know, I grew up, you know, like you said earlier, drawing heroes, you know, on pieces of paper, and you know, classes that I was probably supposed to be paying attention in. And you know, I've written, you know, all of my life, and now I've got, honestly, I've got a 3-year-old son that loves talking about heroes and drawing heroes, and I'm like, man, here I'm talking to a guy who got to live out that dream, and you got to create adventures and blow people's minds with imagination. And I mean, for that, I mean, that's like my dream. You got to live my dream, and that's so awesome. I'm envious.
well, truth be told, I got to live my dream, and so it's all about me, Ryan.
Yeah,
So
yes.
yeah, and looking back, I have to say, in retrospect, what an amazing ride! How fortunate I was. You know, it's not like I'm going off into Valhalla now to the funeral
Exactly.
pyres. I don't want to
Yes.
sound like that. I'm
We're
not
not putting you
morbid.
out to pasture.
I'm not morbid, but current day, I work with this comedian, Greg Criticos. Shout
Okay.
out to Greg. He's a local Queens comedian, and he's really taken off. And I do like graphic design. I do posters for him. And anytime he's a great promoter. He's just like a natural showman. And I'm sort of like, I like to be behind the scenes. I could be creative, but I like to be behind the scenes. It's not like when I was in my 20s, I'm Mike from Marvel Comics. You know,
Yeah.
I'm Mike Rockwitz. I work at Marvel Comics. Here's my business card and everything. So so he introduced me. This is a guy who worked with Stan Lee. He worked on the Mighty Thor. He worked on Captain America. And I'm like, oh gosh, you're embarrassing me. But it's true, and I feel that way. And when people turn around and look at me, they're like, "Wow!" And I'm like, I'm kind of I'm humbled because I had the opportunity. I'm grateful for it, but people still think of that as an amazing opportunity, and I still do too as well. I'm not minimizing it, but it's nice that I impacted people, and even through Facebook, I'll have people writing me and saying like, "Oh, like you did, of course,"
Yes.
and just asking me for things, asking me questions, and I'm flattered. I'm honored, that people remember me, and like I started off like I'm relevant. So it's good times, and
Yeah.
to look back and to even talk about it now, I'm getting all nostalgic, like like working on Thor and being a part of the creation of some of the great issues and coloring some of this stuff overnight when I was grousing about it. I look back on trade paperbacks and wow, I did that. I did that in 3 hours. And most people would be killing to do that. Like you said, like, wow, it was a great ride. But another thing I edited as well,
Yeah.
as we were preparing for this interview, was the WCW comic book. Dun
Oh
dun
my
dun.
gosh, Mike! I can't believe I breezed right by it. I said I wasn't
wasn't
going to
gonna.
talk about it.
I wasn't gonna let you get off the hook with that just yet.
The World Championship Wrestling book.
Comic book, yeah.
Please, as a
Believe it
big
or not,
wrestling fan, I gotta know what that was like.
it was fun. Let me tell you that. That's an understatement. Jim Salicrup. Shout out to Jim Salicrup. He
Okay.
works. He works at Paper Cuts Publishing now. He was the editor of Spider Man when Todd McFarlane was on. He's a legend. I call myself the legend on Facebook, but Jim's a legend. He's super awesome guy. He's an incredible human being, and he somehow negotiated with Turner Properties to get the WCW over comic book. And he's like, "Hey, you're a wrestling fan because believe it or not, we used to wrestle in the hallways of Marvel Comics, me and Dave Wool and everything, like jump off desks and figure four leg locks, and we would
Oh, that's
we,
so cool.
we would break posters and stuff, and we'd have boxing by the freight elevators where we'd have gloves, and I would have blood capsules where I'd say he split me open. So we
Oh
were.
my gosh.
It was always like we were kayfabing it, but like people were like, "Well, what's this?" It's just, did he really get hurt? So it was always a work, as the lingo goes, and
Absolutely.
so we knew how to work. So Jim said, "Hey, I got this," and everyone's like, "I don't want to work on this." So I was like, "I'll work on it, absolutely." So I got to go over to the Turner Properties people over. It was over by Penn Station, and we just talked about ideas. Like, what do you want us to do with this? Like, what's the direction you want to do it? And they didn't really have a clue either. Just like, oh, it's just another method of exposing the Turner characters because it was Ted Turner's company, World Championship Wrestling. And
Yeah.
who do they have at the time? Cactus Jack and Sting and Ron Simmons and Lex Luger and a bunch of other characters. And they hadn't gotten to the point where it was WCW Monday night
Oh,
against
this is
WWF.
pre-Hogan?
Yeah, Hogan hadn't come yet. It was before NWO and all that. We had guys like Johnny B. Bad. Uh,
Oh
I
my
actually,
gosh. You're
I
speaking
actually,
my
I
love
actually,
language.
I actually did a comic book signing with Johnny B. Bad, Mark Miro. I think it was his wife or his girlfriend out in Long Island with Ron Wilson, the penciler, Mike Lackey. Mike Lackey was an insane wrestling fan in the
Yeah.
office, and when I got the book, I was like, Mike, do you want to write this? He's like, absolutely. And like he just came up with all these like Bruise Cruz and the Ghoul and all these characters. And I was like, this is great. Just run with it. Like I did not want to have much creative oversight because like just because I'm a fan doesn't mean I know best. Sometimes fans just want to do it their way. So
Yeah.
I let Mike and run wild. He'd run the stories by me. I'm like, this is awesome. We'd send it over to the Turner people. I don't even think they read it, to be honest. And we had Ron Wilson penciling it. And Ron was great, but he could barely get the likenesses right. So I hired my roommate, Don Hudson, to be the inker.
Okay.
Don was a tremendous artist. He was from the High School of Art and Design, and he was an intern before me. And he worked with the Ramita Raiders, and he was my roommate. And he was looking for work. I was like, "Hey, you want to edit this ink this WCW comic book?" He was like, "Absolutely." And he had done some inking for me on Shield, so gave him the WCW comic book, and he fixed the faces, made it look more like Lex Luger and Ron Simmons and
Oh,
all that. And I have very few pages of original art in my apartment, my humble abode. But the one page I'm the proudest of is the last page of the first issue of the WCW comic book where Lex Luger takes some trophy and smashes it over Ron Simmons' head and then pile
oh,
drives it on it because I said to Lackey he has to pile drive him on the trophy. because
Oh,
I was such a wrestling nerd, where Ray Stevens had pile driven Jimmy Superfly Snuka on the cement floor twice in Allentown, Pennsylvania, that I said, this has to happen in a comic book that I edit. And it did. It made it into print. And like he wrote the dialogue for Missy Hyatt. I think Jim Ross or whoever was the announcer
oh,
saying this
so
is
cool.
disgusting and everything. And we put it out. I have the page and the covers. We just would get stock photos that they gave us. They had nothing to do with like the
The actual
interior.
story.
Yeah, and we would just put silly cover copy on it. And I think it lasted a year.
Yeah, it did not run that long. I was looking through the history of it, and I was like, oh, okay, this did not. This didn't stick around for a while, but I mean,
Yeah,
just a cool little bit of. I mean, as a wrestling fan, just a cool little bit of history.
yeah, it is. And I was lucky to be a part of it because not many people can say they worked on a wrestling comic book for Marvel Comics. So that's why I give myself the moniker the Legend. But yeah, it was because I was young and I was able to do that, and it was just fun because when you're trying to plot the Mighty Thor and Doctor Strange, then you're like, oh, what's going on with the WCW comic book, Mike? The Ghoul on the Cruise or Bruce Cruise or some other silliness, and Ron's turning in great pencils, and we're putting on great cover copy, and we're just putting it out there, and you didn't care if it sold or not. And going to comic book signings, and I think they gave us some free tickets that I didn't even go to an event at the Meadowlands because I'm like, I was busy that night, and it was just fun because I was a huge wrestling fan up to that point. I started going to wrestling matches live at Madison Square Garden in 1981. I was in high school freshman year, and my first friend in high school said to me, like, I started school in September of '81. He said in November, he's like, "Hey, you want to go to the Garden with me and my father to see some wrestling?" And I'm like, "What's that?" Madison Square Garden? He's like, "Yeah, we'll pick you up. We'll go." And I'm like, "Absolutely." So I went to Madison Square Garden every month because he used to have the events there every month.
Yeah.
And Howard Finkel would say, "And next month, coming to the Garden," and
Oh,
like during the end of the matches, and you're like, "Oh, I have to come back for this," and it was incredible. And I was obsessed with wrestling, and I'd go to the independent shows. I would go to little arenas for it, and then once I'm in comic books and working on wrestling, I was like, "This is amazing." And the only wrestler I really met, I met Hulk Hogan one day when he came up to the offices,
okay.
but he wasn't there for the WCW. I think he was just in town, and they're like, "There's Hulk Hogan." I'm like, "He's a giant guy," and I'm like, "What's up?" He's like, "Hey," and then
I met Hulk Hogan. Oh my gosh.
and then Johnny B. Bad, like, who's Mark Merrow, and he had the
Yeah.
gimmick of the pink tights and the makeup, and although he was an amateur boxer and he could kick anyone's
Yeah.
ass, but he was this very effeminate, Little Richard kind of character who was a
Yeah. Definitely
wrestler,
Little Richard.
effeminate with a hot ring girl. And so that was just fun. So I had a very varied career there. Mighty Thor, WCW, Conan, Power Pack, Silver Surfer, Doctor Strange. Um, then all of a sudden, like, what got me out of comics or out of Marvel was the bankruptcy.
Okay.
Everything that was pumped up, eventually what goes up must come down. There were trading cards, holographic covers, foil covers. Anyone who's a fan of the medium, you had Image coming up, and there were 16 X-Men books, 14 Wolverine books, 10 Ghost Rider. I'm being sarcastic, but it just seemed like there was a saturation, a proliferation of characters that the market
Yeah.
couldn't withstand. The direct market was almost going to go belly up, and they just started laying people off. And they're like, "Well, you're part of the first wave of layoffs." So I was like, "Oh, that sucks, bummer." So my career was shut down, I think, in '95. So I'd been up there for almost 10 years from the time I walked in there to when I exited. And the thing is that I was under an editorial contract. They'd given us contracts, and it had just renewed. So they paid me for a year to do nothing,
Oh, okay.
which was awesome because I
I
got to travel and
Yeah.
chill. And I went out to San Diego and I met up with the former letterer and assistant editor of the Mighty Thor, Mike Heisler,
Okay.
who was the editor in chief of Wildstorm for Image. He had been working with Image for a couple of years, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to work out here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I moved to San Diego, and worked for Jim Lee's company on things like Gen 13 and Wetworks and I don't even know what else, DV8 and Wildcats and
Okay.
Stormwatch, and I'm like, oh, this is different. This like working on Conan when you're in next to the Mighty Thor office was one thing, but working on Grifter, I was like, oh no, I did it just for the paycheck and for the love of the medium. I didn't last long. I lasted about 18, 20 months.
Okay.
And
So
the
very
last
short run.
but what had catapulted me out the door from there was I Heroes Reborn had come about. That's
Okay.
where Marvel was gonna reignite the spark for the comic books. So they
Yeah.
started hiring the Image guys to do the Marvel comics. So Rob Liefeld was doing Captain America. I think Whilce Portacio and I think Jeff Loeb were doing Iron Man, and I don't know who was doing Fantastic Four. So Rob just I don't know what happened. Somehow the books came out to Wildstorm. So Mike asked me, "Do you want to edit Captain America?" And I'm like, "Really?"
Do I?
I'm like, "Okay." And at that point, Mark Rummel had already passed away, and I was Mark's editor on Captain America, and I was already the editor of Captain America, and I got laid off from Marvel, so I still had a bitter taste in my mouth. I'm like, "Oh, so I wasn't good enough to edit this when I was at the Marvel offices in New York City, but 3,000 miles away and at Image Comic Books, I'm now good enough to edit Captain America." So I had a bit of an attitude and a chip on my shoulder. So I lasted about 8 issues on that, and it was Jeff Loeb and oh, I forgot the artists who were working on it. They were super talented. I think it wasn't Mel Rubio, it was someone else. Uh, they were talented. It was just like, I can't do this anymore, like, so in like 97, I was like, I'm done. And I just packed up my stuff and I came back to New York and I was like, I can't do this. And I freelanced for Marvel, like doing computer coloring and interior coloring and stuff on all
Okay.
the books, like X-Men, Cable, and Excalibur. I did some Thor work. I was coloring Thunderstrike for a while.
But
And
not in a very would you say like consistent like it had been earlier just a few years
no, it
back.
wasn't like this was my monthly gig. I do like spot work, and I was just burned out because when you start off as a kid and you're 30, like you start off when you're 17, 18, and then you're 30, like it's almost like a major league career. You're on your last legs.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
30 by I wish I was still 30, but 30 is by no means, a retirement age. But I was just like, I'm done. Just doesn't have the same thing for me. So I just switched careers and I got out of it because the work was drying up. It was the computer age. And I work on computers every day. We're talking via computer right now. Don't get me wrong. And
Yes.
I work in educational technology, so computers are my friend. They're my ally. They keep me off the streets. But I colored comic books with traditional Doc Martin dyes and color coded them with a pen. And now they wanted me to color code something in Adobe Photoshop on a computer that kept giving me the little bomb in the middle of doing something that never saved my work because it couldn't
Oh
the
no.
process. It's the old Mac, the Power Macs and Fugazi Macs of the 90s and late 90s. It wasn't like, oh, I have my MacBook Pro that can handle everything. Macs were they were newer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Photoshop was still on version 6 or 7. It wasn't like Creative Cloud.
It's
So
like the Stone Age compared to today.
yeah, I mean, it's still dynamic and you could still do the work, but it took forever to save things. Like you could walk away, get a cup of coffee, take a shower, and it would still be saving something. One cover, and you would always cross your fingers, like, will this work? And then you had to put it on a zip disk or a SideQuest drive and bring it into the office. It was different, and I didn't like it. It lacked the organic feel of the paper, the Xerox paper, the dyes, the brush, the sitting at a table and listening to music. And this was just like boring. It was very boring to me. And I did it for the paycheck and and it just took forever. Like one cover would take almost 10 hours. I'm like, I'm doing the separators work, I'm doing all this other work and putting all these lens flares and color holds and all that. And I'm making $100. I'm like, I'm making less now than I was, like nearly when I was a high school intern. So this is just not worth it.
It was time to move on.
Yeah, it was. So I pulled the plug on it, and I can't say that anyone said, "Oh, Mike, wait." I let my feelings be known, and I was done.
So Mike, before we get out of here,
Sure.
I just wanted to maybe look back in retrospect when you leave Thor, like what was what was your favorite part of working on Thor? What did you hope to accomplish on your time with that character? And then we'll get out of here.
What was I hoping to accomplish?
Yeah, because I mean, you were a fan as a kid, and you loved this character, and then you got to work on him, and what was your hope to accomplish on your time there?
Well, I wanted to bring him back to relevance or maintain his relevance in the Marvel universe because, like I alluded to earlier or stated earlier, Ghost Rider and all these other characters were just like stealing all the thunder. The X characters,
Yeah,
Wolverine, were stealing the thunder, and Thor was once again being relegated to the past. So I wanted to keep his relevance. I wanted to maintain sales. I wanted to maintain consistency with how he had been written throughout his history. You know, when you look at Thor, at least up until when I exited or a few years after, he had a lot of good runs.
yeah,
It wasn't like one of those titles where you're like, I don't like the DC bash, but a lot of DC comic books, they're older characters. It just seems like they've had everyone in the world trying to do them. Like
yeah,
how many people have written Batman? Like my God, and Superman because they're ancient characters too. But it just seems like so many rotating creative teams. And Thor had some pretty solid teams on it. Like they stayed on it because they liked the character, and that's what I wanted to establish and maintain. I think I was in maintenance mode then, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't do anything to screw it up. So I think I was a little gun shy because, like, when you're given the major league, you're brought up from the minors to the majors. You're like, oh, I might strike out for the first 6 weeks. So
yeah.
that's
Okay,
how I felt, and
no, that's understandable.
and also managerially, the company was changing, so it wasn't like I was just left on my own. And this is important for context.
Yeah,
I had a managing editor, then I had a group editor, and then I had an editor in chief. I don't know if you've seen the movie Office Space, where it says like, I don't know who to
yes,
report. If I have like 5 or 6 bosses. I had that, and it took the joy out of just wanting to create the character, work with the characters as is. I had to keep running things by people because there were so many crossovers going in the world, and everyone wanted their hand in reviewing it. They were just doing their job, but the way management had become was just nuts. Where you were just like, who do I answer to? Why doesn't this person like it? And it kind of sucked the life out of me. And I was just trying to keep my dignity and the grace of the character as well. And not just fly off the handle and say, like, well, you do it. Because I love Thor. I love the character. I always will. I always have. And so that was my mission.
yeah.
And if I could go back in time, would I do it differently? Well, hopefully I could if the managerial structure wasn't in place. And I had some of the smarts I had now, and if I could hire Jack Kirby again, I would. But
That's the
given
ace in the hole all
yeah,
the time.
yeah, given all of the ingredients, my goal was just to keep it moving along, make it exciting for the readers, make sure that they kept coming back, making sure that the stories were clear. They may have been goofy, but at least you could say, "Oh, there was a beginning, middle, and end. There was a conflict, and our hero wasn't relegated to the background." So that was always the mission. Whether it was successful or not remains to be seen, as people remember me and as they shovel dirt on me in the cemetery. I don't know, but
Oh no.
my goal was always like it wasn't just for a paycheck. You get into comic books not just for the paycheck. It's not like, oh, I'm going to work at Wendy's just so I can get a paycheck to cover some bills. You have to have a passion to work in comic books. You have to have that willingness to go to any length to make the characters the best they could be, and that's what I wanted to do. And for
Well,
the most part, I'm happy with what I did. I've been denigrating my work because as a creative person, you need to always check yourself. You can't just say my poop doesn't stink. I'll own it. I'll own the stench. And sometimes I put out some clunkers, and sometimes I put out some really good stuff. So looking back, I'm happy.
Well, I can definitely say that I appreciate all the work you put into it. I've been able to read some of the issues that you've edited, and Ron talking to Ron was awesome because he kind of let me on the inside of that time period on the book, and just getting to further that conversation with you. I really appreciate your guys' work because it's something that so many of us probably think we could do better, but you guys actually put your time and your sweat and your hours into it, and really put yourselves to the task of entertaining people. And I've been incredibly entertained. I did want to give people an opportunity to reach out to you. I mean, we connected through the Captain America comic book fans podcast, or comic book fans Facebook group, and that's where we kind of started our conversations. But where can people, if they want to reach out to you and talk further, maybe about some comics, or maybe a world championship wrestling, um, where can people reach out to you?
That's an interesting question. I'm so reclusive. I'm not on a lot of pages. They can email me.
Okay.
That's fine. I'm a big fan of White Castle hamburgers. So those of you who are listening, I can be reached at White Castle Rock, like rock as in Rockwitz. So one word, White Castle Rock at yahoo.com. I have a White Castle tattoo. That was my first tattoo ever in 1987. That's why I also the legend. So White Castle Rock at yahoo.com. I'm not a big Facebook guy. I go on, I'm in my 50s, people. So I'm not a boomer, but I'm also not one of these people who lives for social media. Like, what's going on in the world today? I check in because I have my kids on it, my friends are on it. Like, Walt Simonson wished me happy birthday a couple of weeks ago. How cool am I?
How cool am I?
I just maintain my friendships like that because these are people I love and work with. So that's why I do it. But email is best. If you can find me on these fan pages, I'm on the Captain America fan page because I stumbled upon it. I thought it was really cool. If there's a Thor fan page, I will happily join it. But like I said, how many fan pages can you deal with in one day with so much
Yeah.
time, so many distractions like a day job? And the new universe page, I'm a part of that too because uh, it's fun to just see the people who or meet the people who actually read this stuff. And I'm like, where were you when this was actually happening? Could you have told your
Yeah, you
friends?
come on, guys.
I'd still have a job if you actually bought the damn things. Nostalgia's great, but yeah. So yeah, White Castle Rock at yahoo.com.
Okay.
I can't guarantee that I'll be responsive immediately. Hopefully I don't open up the floodgates here. My ego will indicate that I am. But, feel free to reach out. I love chatting with people. You know, I'm humbled by all this. Still, I'm grateful for the opportunity just to do this today. So thank you.
Well, Mike, I really appreciate it. I just want to give anybody the opportunity, if anything, your work spoke to them or entertained them, just to give them an opportunity, like you've given me an opportunity tonight. I just want to say thank you, and we'll down the road.
You got it, Ryan. Thanks, everyone. And even if my work sucked, you can tell me. I can take it. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Look forward to this being live. So thanks again.
That does it for the show today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed our latest list segment and the conclusion of our chat with Mike Rockwitz. Now, next week on the show, we're going to be joined by a guest that I am super excited to share with you. His name is Chris Eberly, and he is from the Comic Geek Speak podcast. If you don't know what that podcast is, go search for it, check it out. It's a great group of guys over there that talk comics and movies and all sorts of stuff. They do a great job over there. Chris is going to join us for an extra special Asgardian history lesson. Yeah, we are going to cover a group of short comics called The Tales of Asgard that provide more background information on Asgard, Odin, Loki, Thor, and so many more characters. You won't want to miss our fun conversation with Chris. Also, we have some new comics we're going to talk about. Next week, we are going to break down issue number 5 of the Mighty Valkyrie limited series from Thorn Grunbeck that is coming out I believe next week. So that limited series has been running for most of the year. We're going to talk about it next week, and maybe later on we'll go back and we'll read the entire run of that limited series with you. As always, we want to thank you for joining us aboard the Rainbow Bridge today. Hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to share this with a friend, and don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the show wherever you find great podcasts. If you want to talk more about Thor, which we always want to do, go follow us on Instagram at Mighty Thor Podcast. Tell us your favorite friend of Thor. Who was your favorite person that maybe didn't make the list today? Also, don't forget to reach out to Mike Rockwitz at Mike Rockwitz. He would love to chat with you and just let you pick his brain a little bit about his time at Marvel Comics. I have been Ryan Doze. I hope you've enjoyed the show today. Until we see you again aboard the Rainbow Bridge, I would like to remind you, stay worthy.